again, people at home and around the world. We're live again from everyone's favorite store, the Noman Store, inside the green screen hangar at the celebrated Noman School of Visual Effects in the grounds of TVC. I'm sitting here with Glenn Hetrick and Neville Page, fresh off the foothills of a wonderful presentation that saw the collection of funds of knowledge from both the digital and the traditional side. I want to thank you for being here with me. Thanks very much. It's great to be here.
Yeah,
good to see you both again.
Nice to see you.
The action started off today. There were little bits of feathers. I'm mulching everywhere. The action started off today with a resounding sort of presentation from none other than monster maker himself, Rick Baker. And I think that for me, sitting in the audience after all of these years, being a part of the community, and having you fellows come up next, it served as a passing of the torch to some degree. And I felt like, wow, that's very interesting. Here is the senior statesman that has inspired these fellows for so many years. I think it's safe to say that he serves as a barometer for a lot of us. And then you guys came up and you had a real grasp of the new age and the old school technologies. Talk to us a little bit about your sentiments with that regard in mind, me saying something like that. How does that make you feel as perhaps the next wave of senior statesmen and leaders, thought provokers?
And absolutely, I mean, that's huge. You know, every time I see Rick, I'm still kind of freaked out. Like,
Yeah.
dude,
Right.
it's Rick Baker because
I know.
But as a kid, like, I would schedule my days as a child around the airings of Thriller, because MTV would tell you, like, it'll be on at 7, it'll be on at 8:30. So my entire life was scheduled around seeing Thriller every single time it was on. And, it still kind of freaks me out to see him, because he's sort of that guy that was in the video, and they'd run the making of right behind it. And he's the star of the thing. And just to see him bring up the acetates today, I knew so exactly what he was talking about, because I would watch it over and over and over and over again.
The compliment I gave Rick was from the heart, because he was the first introduction to this thing called clay sculpting.
Absolutely.
I literally, at age 11, 12 years old, with this Fangoria magazine, that picture of Rick Baker and his hide sculpture, I could not comprehend how somebody could take a block of clay and make it look so real and so cool. And ever since that moment, this is what I wanted to do. So
He
truly
serves as the starting point for a lot of people involved in this
yeah.
business. Now
Yeah.
you serve potentially as the next layer of that kind of evolution for the artist of tomorrow. Here we are, coming full circle to a point where technology and classic or traditional art forms are coming together. I mean, you have a tremendous responsibility, in my opinion, and I think that after what I've seen today, that we're all in good hands. Talk a little bit about how you feel potentially as thought provokers and leaders going into the future, picking up where he's left off, in a way.
Well, first, I don't see it as a responsibility, because I think I would crumble and fold if it was a responsibility. It's just a byproduct, potentially, of my proclivity to want to pay it forward and educate. I've been a teacher for about 20 years.
Right.
Traditional drawing, perspective, how to render a cube, a cone, a sphere, all those things. So from that experience, I've always felt that it's absolutely critical to pass the baton of information that I've gained over the years. Because when you do pay it forward, it also pays you back in dividends, because people will take techniques, notions that you've developed, and evolve them even further in ways that you couldn't imagine. And that's the nature of this process of education, which is what Alex Alvarez has always been about with regards to Noman, is creating
I think that's a great
community.
point. We're sitting here, as you can see, and behind us, just a wealth of information and knowledge. Generationally speaking, there are, you've got the Ray Harryhausen book, the Art of Ray Harryhausen book, sitting just right in between the two of you, and all the way back up to the top of some of the more recent CG-related DVDs and resources in that regard. To hear you say that is really inspiring as well. How do you feel about this overall?
Yeah, I do believe that all of it will eventually find a singularity. I think that they have to emerge and become one. I mean, ultimately, whether it's music or building a car or sculpting a character, it's resonant energy that has to manifest in the physical plane through individuals. And so, like, learning different art forms and disciplines so that you can let that creative energy move through you, I think that force, that prime mover, is constantly pushing us as humans to find more efficacious ways. Is exactly what we were talking about today. Like, not only is it exciting to work with one of your best friends, not only is it exciting to be able to offer producers super high resolution, hands-on experience with the design themselves, all those things are incredible. but being able to design and build more than you could have in a single lifetime. That's what this tool does. It allows you to be far more prodigious in the amount of work that you can complete. I mean, years ago, this thing that we've just done together as a personal project, we've taken a year,
Absolutely,
to prep it and,
absolutely.
and we made it happen so quickly, and that's amazing. We're getting closer to true creativity, being able to take things out of the ether and out of your mind and manifest them in physical reality so efficiently. That's awesome. That we'll get to see hundreds of Neville Page designs in a lifetime as opposed to just a few that were fully.
I take my glasses off because that's a very. I think it's a good thing. I take my glasses off because I want to communicate this very serious. I feel like there's a layer of disconnect here that's happening, and I'm not liking it for myself. But I think that you're touching on something that is extremely important. From the exterior, you're sort of very sort of just sort of unapproachable demeanor in a way. But then
Well, thank
there's
you.
this, yeah, both of you. Sort of
was
large,
him
no,
or
both
me?
of you, both large man, very tall guy, and then, you're very menacing in a way, but to hear you say that in that regard, it ties into something that I had the privilege of sitting with Norman Seif last week in Portugal, and we were talking about this, and you said something about the energy, and he was talking about a feminine energy and how creativity is born of this feminine energy, and to hear you say that is really telling, and I think that you also touched on something very important in the other room when you said that there was this unity among the team and this idea of coming together to work, regardless of what the tools were, regardless of what the constructs of how it would get done were. It was more important to have this creative energy be fostered through the entire. So do you feel that sort of mentality is born of your time as a theater actor on the East Coast in any way?
Yeah, I think that we share that past. We've both
Both of
come
you, yeah,
up
I know this is
working
valid.
in theater and acting, and I think that when you peel back those layers, you find that relationships are bound by synergies that exist on all these different levels, right? So, like, it's not just our love of creatures and of design and of makeup, or the fact that we ended up in our careers working on the same show. There are all these things that tie us together with their past. So it's having the experience of we still both love acting and performing and being in front of the camera. We share a massive amount of the same moral fibers as well. So then when we discuss wrong and right and what should be done in a situation, theoretical or practical, we're always on the same page. So yeah, absolutely. It's all. This is Kabbalah. I mean, it's occult 101. It's magic. It's energy moving and manifesting,
Absolutely.
and that's what alchemy is about. Working with groups of people and groups of technology and tools, just to get out of the way and allow that creative force to move through us to create the absolute best things that we can create in our lifetime together.
I'm so pleased to hear you say that because I had a student stop me at about 3 a.m. in Europe at this last presentation, and he says to me, "Can I have a few moments?" I said, "Of course, sure. I'm not heading anywhere at 3 a.m. So I sat with him, and he says, "Do you mind drawing a picture, a sketch of an ogre's head in my book for me?" And I said, "Okay, sure, no problem. Who else has done this?" So I'm flipping through, and I see a bunch of the other presenters, and I said, "Well, I guess I'm bound to it now." And I start doing that, and I really just wanted to get to my room and drink some Johnny Black because it had been a long day of production. But I got into it, and I started talking with him and talking about creativity and where it comes from. And of course, this was a sort of discourse that we were having, and I suddenly just, from time to time, I'll draw with both hands because I'm trying to be, expedient about my process and hurry up. I don't need to, I'm filling in hair. It's not that complicated. So I start filling it in with my left hand, and I'm drawing and going. He says, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm using my hands." And he had a moment of pause. He said, "But how are you doing that?" And I said, "Well, because I don't ascribe to these physical constructs anymore. I've meditated on this enough to think about design as a creative process and then my body as a tool, whether I'm making a song on my guitar with my friends, or whether I'm acting in a short film, or whether I'm producing an image, or whether I'm working with a computer, or whether I'm having a discourse with someone. All of these physical facets that I'm incorporating are coming from the same creative core." And I feel like it's really inspiring to sit here with you fellas to hear you say that, because I felt really kind of, well, is this maybe something most people don't understand? But to hear you two say that, I think it's really telling. I mean,
It's exciting to participate in the purity of that kind of idea. Like, it just happens with us non-verbally. Like,
and that's a magical thing to have
we
with
never
another
really
person.
discuss things. Like, we never. It's sort of and it just moves from one stage to the next as
Right.
a concept between the two of us. It's wonderful.
I think it's almost like a sports team, and you see this a lot. We had the Lakers, who were very prolific for many years, and Phil Jackson was, I think, an instrumental part of managing that team dynamic between those celebrities and stars on those teams. And at this point, you're both respected and highly regarded
And of
as
course,
individuals.
It's not just us.
Of course, no, you have a whole team
I
of.
always say we. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
a team. Of
I say we as
people.
well.
Yeah, always we, of course.
I mean, because the same thing is true. We would always get sort of compliments, individual compliments, working with Pixelogic. People say, "Oh, you're great, you're great." And I say, "Well, no, we're great as a group of people. It's nothing without each other."
For sure.
So I'm happy to hear you say that as well. Let's talk more about that. I had a couple of things lined up here for the both of you. I wanted to say, talk more about how you came together and sort of this is a long-standing friendship at this point. I mean, representative of many great teams. You've got Keith and Mick.
Yes. Well, in the scheme of things, we haven't known each other that long.
Right. Maybe on a collision course for much longer than you're aware of.
It's like Glenn was saying, our interests, both in the arts and our personal moral compass, are so similar that, call it destiny if you want,
Right.
but when we met on Face Off,
Right.
which was accidental, potentially, depending on how you like to look at things,
Right.
fate, we just hit it off. And it was kind of instant. Episode 1, shortly after shaking hands in the hallway, we kind of realized, we're gonna get along. But as we have gotten to know one another creatively and worked creatively, which is in some ways more of a testing ground of your friendship, is
Absolutely. Yeah.
to
Absolutely.
work together.
I've had many guitars thrown at me.
Yeah, with a deadline, you really learn the limits and the real depth of how one does get along. And I think we've realized that we have the same general layout when it comes to temperament, which is we're calm, we think it through, we don't speak unless we've thought it out, and as a consequence, it's a pretty well-oiled machine where there's not a lot of emotion involved at all, thank goodness.
Other than the emotions needed to come from that, again,
Oh,
that
that's
creative,
negative
that
motion.
creative spirit.
Yeah. All
good
very
places.
positive. Look, I geeked out because
Sorry, I was going to have you hold that a little closer to
Sure.
give me the...
When they told me that Nev was joining the show, because and this is not for the sake of the plug.
Yeah, right.
To me, it
But
was
there's no
this
corporate whores here. for the record.
abstract idea. Like he was the dude in the Nomen DVDs because I'd watched the DVDs
Me too.
a bunch of
Same
times. So
deal.
when they said his name, like I didn't even conceive of him as a person.
He's
I
the
thought of
voice.
his name on the cover of the Nomen DVD.
Just a
Like
soft voice in the background.
Exactly. I'm like, oh, his DVDs are great. So
Not as I imagined him either. When I finally met you in person, I was like, oh, he's a larger man than I imagined.
Larger than that voice.
No, well, with that being said, I mean, you're really raising something of a very important nature, or you bring it to the forefront, actually. You can't feel this through the camera. The very sort of stable energy that goes on between the two of you here, sitting with you is a very relaxing energy, actually for me as well. It's sort of a calming. I've had some meetings with you before where it's sort of fun, and yeah, I can say that now I realize that there's this layer of very sort of thoughtful, laid-back vibration. How do you deal with now at this particular point in your career where you've paid your dues, it's safe to say, you're sort of experienced enough, how do you get away with being more creatively impactful in the process of making these things happen? Because a lot of young people think that it's their right to be creative. They say, well, I want to work in production, I want to be creative, and they don't realize that it's commercially a job. This is a commercial job. You're going into a job, you have some responsibilities. You're not going to be sort of Monet at this particular moment in your career. What advice could you give in that regard for overcoming that? I know it's a long question, but
Yeah, but I do understand the question quite well because
Okay.
it's something I've been asked before and I've answered before, and my answer still is the same, which is if you're going to be a commercial artist, which is what we are,
Right.
we're working, developing product for a consumer. The product happens to be Creature a lot of the time.
with a monetary attachment to it, popcorn
Absolutely.
and
yeah,
and
I mean,
soda
your
pop.
your design may be a toy at
Right.
some point. So, point being, you're working for somebody. You're helping realize their dream, their vision. And if you go into it thinking that you are creating your own art, it's a misconception that often results in discontent with being in this industry. People will see a film or television show, and their art is represented on screen, and they're disappointed because it didn't turn out the way they had intended.
Right.
It's not about you. And once you understand that you are helping somebody else realize their dream and their vision, it becomes a pleasurable experience. And that's just a maturity that comes with having gone through the painful experience of being disappointed, because that's not the reality. If you want to be the person in charge, then you need to be the person in charge, which nobody ever really is in charge. There's always somebody that you have to answer to.
Right.
But how do you then still infuse this scenario with your art and your vision? And again, it's about having the right perspective and knowing that you've been hired to realize somebody's specific vision. James Cameron on Avatar, he knew exactly what he wanted us to do.
Very daunting task, right? Because it's like playing music, again, to come to that. You're saying, I want it to sound like this. You're not playing it like this. Play it like this.
Yeah, but ironically, it's daunting and it's not. Where it's not daunting, the obvious daunting nature is James Cameron telling you what he needs. The part that's not daunting is the fact that he's just told you what he needs, versus so many other directors might say, I need you to do a, thing.
I relish that, actually, for someone to tell you directly.
Yeah.
Glenn, could you please make it like this? And then you say, well, you solved the problem.
Jim would grab my sketchbook and draw in it what he needed it to be. And it's fantastic for two reasons. One, I know exactly what to do. And the second one is eBay.
This guy.
I got a bunch of Cameron sketches that I can now sell.
Cameron sketches for sale.
I won't be.
It also serves as a sort of barometer to say, well, you drew it like that, man. So hang on a second. Just register that way.
Yeah. But we also get to do, I think it's a really good litmus test. Do you want to do this? Do you love doing what you do? In my 40s, after we do several 15-hour days, often 6 days a week, and sometimes for weeks or months on end. And then we come up with this project that we're going to work on together that can be what we want it to be. Do you get your ass out of bed on a Saturday morning and go into the shop for another 10, 12 hours when you've literally not had a day off in over a month? Do you do it or do you not? Yeah, no, I mean, we both put in so many hours, and we're shooting the show. We're working on multiple productions at any given time, shooting Face Off, and we're still showing up to hang out with each other and work on art. That's what we want to do. That's our vision. Like that nothing's more telling. And I understand what you're saying. Like there's an entitlement issue with the younger generation. Of course, this is not everybody, and I hate making
we don't want to make sweeping statements.
But I think a lot of people do feel like they have because they've decided they want to do something creative. Write music, build cars, be a director, actor.
The distortion that occurs.
They show up and go, right, I get it. It's never occurred to me that I deserve to be doing this. I grew up in Pennsylvania. My dad was a steel worker at the Bethlehem Steel. My grandfather and uncle ran a plumbing and heating business. I've helped dig septic tanks in the middle of winter, frozen ground with shovels. That's real work. So that's why I can get out of bed on a Saturday.
Nobody knows the winter like we East Coast people from that lake country.
It's such an honor to be able to do that. I still walk into the shop and cannot believe that we can lock the door behind us and we're just left alone inside this giant space with all these cool art tools, and we can do whatever we want. It's still the most amazing thing.
Never an incredible insight, a privilege is exactly what I would say. Yeah. Just recently wrapped a short film with a friend of mine, Loic Zimmerman from Luma Pictures, and we were working on this thing in our free time. The guy's working 90-hour weeks. And it's like, do you have the gas in the tank to make it your project and to make it come to life? I mean, you have to want to birth this thing. Again, back to the feminine energy. Are you willing to go through the process of carrying to term this idea and this construct and then have the energy to birth it? That's something worth thinking about. They're giving me the spinning finger of death behind the camera, which means that it's time for us to go. Well, listen, on behalf of myself, Glenn Hetrick, and Neville Page, back to you, Paul, inside the main screen hangar.